Okay, so let's look at the syllabus and the paper first. So we'll share the screen. So here we have the syllabus, and you all have this on D2L, and we're just going to skip. First, let's look at the schedule, and look, there's not a lot left. I am 1 week behind on discussion posts, but I did post feedback for one of the discussion posts yesterday, so you can look at those. And I'll catch up on 2 of them this week, so we'll be caught up this week. I had to go to 2 different universities, and Memorial Day kind of messed me up, but we'll catch up this week. So right now we're already in week 5 this week, and so we've only got a few weeks left, and then on the last week, so the last week is a strange week because, we meet on a Monday, which is like, beginning of the week, but in reality, it doesn't matter what day of the week it is. So that'll be our last night. But what we're going to do is, because you'll be writing a final paper, you won't have to do a discussion post that week. Okay, you'll just have the final paper, and we'll talk about autism and Tourette's and things like that. But I also just want you to kind of share briefly, and this is for the face-to-face class, the Zoom, kind of what you did in your paper. Now, for the class that is not meeting on Zoom, since you won't be meeting on Zoom, you will have a discussion post, but it won't be on all the material. I just want you to share a little bit about what you found out in your paper, or maybe I'll just have you share I have to decide. I just want you to kind of share something with the class about your paper. I just want other students to hear what you did on your paper. That's the whole point of it. So, we'll figure out a way to do that. And I'll let you know. Instructions will be in a discussion post for the D2L class. Anyway, but Zoom class, you'll just share live a little bit about what you did in your paper. Nothing formal. Okay, so, but this 7-week semester goes like super fast. All right, so let's look at the instructions for the paper. It's supposed to be fun, but it can be a little confusing. If you've had me before, you've done something similar to this. All right, so final paper. It's a clinical assessment of a movie character. It doesn't have to be a movie character. It could be a comic book character. It could be a book character. It could be a character from a play. Basically, any character, movie, book, comic book, anything like that. It could be a television character, a cartoon character, a Disney character, any character that somebody else would readily kind of recognize. Basically, all the Disney characters have a diagnosis. They're pretty easy. All right. Except for Moana, she's independent. Okay, so this assignment is meant to familiarize yourself with the DSM-5 process of diagnosing. It should be 4 to 5 content pages. So you're going to do it in APA. So title page and references, but 4 to 5 content pages. So if you number the title page and you number the references, it'll be like 7 pages. So do your best with APA. APA doesn't have to be perfect, but I want to see that you made an effort with APA. 1-inch margins, 12 pitch times New Roman, double space, not 2.5 spaces, double space. Here's the thing. Use professional language as if you were in a practicum or internship and you were writing up a case. Okay, you're not going to say, oh, I watched the movie something or other. You're writing about a client. You're writing up a case, So, you're going to say, my client, so-and-so, was observed or, was assessed. So it's professional language as if you are a counselor and this was your client. You're not going to refer to a movie. You're not going to refer to character. It's like real life. You're just using a character. It can be funny, I mean, you can refer to things in the movie, but as if it was real and serious. So like if you were doing Ariel, she might have a hoarding problem. She lost her mother at a very young age. All right. Use professional language as if the character was actually your client. You're not referring to a movie, write as if it's your client. Using the information from your lectures, textbooks, research, you'll complete the following. So assessment, part A, okay? So really it is 3 main parts, okay? The first part is the assessment, and that's what I described in my lecture using that assessment that I gave you. So that's what you're going to do, You're going to write up an assessment of your client, okay? And you don't have to copy everything in the format of that assessment I gave you. You're going to write it in paragraphs because, you're going to write it in a narrative. That assessment I gave you, that's how you ask the questions, but you're going to write it as if you're writing a report. These are the findings of your assessment. Okay, you're going to include that information, but you're going to write a report about it. So part 1. This is what you found in your assessment. You're going to include all the answers to that assessment that I gave you, okay? This assessment information will be the foundation of your assignment. A clear description in the assessment format of the character that you're diagnosing is important. So the key thing to the assessment is that you're going to have to find out that your client has all the criteria to fit the diagnosis in the assessment. Okay, you can't give a diagnosis if the symptomology and criteria isn't discovered in the assessment. And you have to provide examples. Okay, you can't just say, oh, client has this symptomology and fits this criteria. You have to give an example of it in their life. Okay. All right. So part 2 is actually B and C. I should have made that a little more clear or combined them, but you're going to make the diagnosis, and then you're going to talk about how the client fits each of the criteria in a very logical way. And that's not really going to be that long because you've already talked about it in general in the assessment. Okay. But here's what I'd like you to do. And I should have written this in the syllabus, but I'm going to, it would be nice if you talked about, well, how would you kind of break the news to your client? How would you describe this diagnosis to your client in a session so that they're not upset about it? And basically I talked about this in class, but the first thing is you want to make sure that the client agrees with the diagnosis. Does the client agree that they fit the criteria? And, you want to make sure that they understand that you're making the diagnosis so that you can help treat them. So you're going to work on this together. Frank?
Yeah, I had a quick question about assessment.
Yeah.
You mentioned in assessment that sometimes it's good to establish a baseline with some clients, especially when it's a kind of consequential diagnosis, I guess. But I just wanted to make sure that do we always do that? But I assume that we only do that with very heavy diagnosis, that we actually have them gradually get off their meds with their doctor's permission to establish a baseline or not. I just wasn't certain about that.
So if a client's on a lot of different meds and they've been on them for years, then I work with their doctor to take them off the meds. But most of your movie characters are not going to be on medication.
Okay.
I would not choose a movie character that's on medication. So that'll make it easier for you.
Can you choose cartoons?
Absolutely. Cartoons, Disney characters, comic book heroes like Batman, any character, yeah. Okay, so part one's the assessment. Part two, you make the diagnosis and go over the criteria and how they fit the criteria and talk about it with the client. How do you discuss this with the client? Do they agree with it? Talk about how you explain that, you're going to work together so that you can help them through this, so that they can better deal with whatever the issue is. Be empathic, be a good counselor. So that's part two, B and C. And then part D, that's part three. Then you're going to talk about the treatment. And the treatment is where a little bit of research has to come in. Okay, because you're not going to know what the best treatment is for every diagnosis. So you just have to go online to the library and go into the professional journals and type in basically the diagnosis, and I would shorten it. So let's say, borderline, and then I would type treatment, treatment borderline or something like that. I would not include medication for this paper because you're counselors. You can't prescribe medication. I want to hear what you're going to do as a therapist. Okay. You can say you're going to refer them to a psychiatrist and work with them, but that's only 2 sentences. Okay. I'm more interested in hearing what you're going to do as a therapist with them. Okay. So you can say you're going to work with a psychiatrist and include whatever medication they recommend. But I want to hear what you're going to do as a therapist. So you're going to come up with just a couple articles about what's the best treatment for whatever diagnosis you come up with. And how are you going to work with the client and incorporate that treatment? So you're going to write a basic treatment plan. And I'm not talking about like an outline. You're going to write a few paragraphs of how are you going to use that treatment with the client. So it's going to be a narrative. It's not going to be like a weekly outline or anything like that. Just kind of a description of how you're going to use a couple different types of, therapies with the client. So it says, please use at minimum 3 references from journals. Okay, so you might find 3 journals and one of them might recommend, well, 1 or 2 might recommend CBT, but try to find at least 2 different types of therapies. If CBT is one of them, try to find a second one. And talk about, okay, this is how we're going to use this over the next few weeks with the client. These are some of the things we're going to do. Maybe some of the techniques. How's this going to play out with the client? What's it going to look like in therapy? So 3 parts. It's only 4 or 5 type pages. So let's say it's 5 pages. You're going to have 2 pages for assessment. You're going to have 1 page for the diagnosis and 2 pages for the treatment. So that's pretty easy. 2, 1, 2. All right, questions? Questions about the paper? It's pretty short, but you might be able to get it done before you have to work on all your other class papers. Then you'll get it out of the way. All right. And if you need help, if you're thinking about a character, think about it ahead of time and then stick around after class and ask me about it, and I'll help you with it. All right, I'm going to stop recording and then I'll record again for the regular class.